Onwards to red, then. Aki Emberkeeper. 1 and a red for a 2/1 enchantment creature goblin warrior. Whenever non-token modified creature you control dies, create a 1/1 colorless spirit creature token. That seems garbage. Aki Ronin. 1 and a red for a 1/3 creature goblin samurai. Whenever a samurai or warrior you control attacks alone, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. That seems garbage. Aki Warpaint. Single red, enchantment aura. Enchant artifact or creature. As long as enchanted permanent is a creature, it gets +2/+1. That doesn't seem particularly good. Ambitious Assault. 2 and a red, instant. Creatures you control gain +2/+0 until end of turn. If you control a modified creature, draw a card. Huh, okay, wait. That's not technically terrible. Are we doing this all tonight? Until I discover the ability to make good decisions, yes. Although I probably won't be uploading any videos on Sunday in that case, because I'm definitely not editing a video tonight. We are already past that point where that is possible. So maybe I've got nothing left to lose. I don't think Ambitious Assault winds up seeing play in Standard, but like, assuming it's free to draw a card with it, which it isn't, but like, assuming it was, it would probably be the most playable version of this effect we've ever seen at 3 mana. It's just, most playable and actually playable are not necessarily synonyms, and that's kind of like the core problem going on there. Atsushi, the Blazing Sky. We're going to get a lot of jokes about the fact that the name includes sushi, huh? Alright. I'm on board for a giant flaming sushi. 2 red, 4/4 legendary creature dragon spirit. Flying, trample. When Atsushi, the Blazing Sky dies, choose 1. Exile the top 2 cards of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play those cards or create 3 treasure tokens. Discover the ability to make good decisions. 8 quadruple blue instant. Seek 6 spells and discount your hand by 2. Extremely flavorful because the ability to make good decisions is not playable. Sushi just seems worse than all the other 4-drop dragons. In the context of Standard, I don't know if that's true. In the context of formats where Townraiser Tyrant exists, then I'm inclined to agree. Although, I don't think worse than all of the other ones. I think... So, the interactions with Whelp, meaning generic mana costs are more valuable, is kind of complicated. But I do think that I like this quite a bit more than the Moon, whatever its name, dragon. Worse than Regent. What is that, Moonveil Regent? Is that the one? I think it's better than Moonveil Regent. Although Legendary means you're probably not jamming 4 of it. But Moonveil Regent is interesting with the discount stacking further off of Whelp. But as far as just like paying retail 4-drops, I'd rather have Atsushi than Moonveil Regent, I think. It does not have haste. It's got trample though. It is legendary, which means you probably only play 2 of it. So you probably still end up playing a split, but I think I'd much rather play 2 and 2 than 4 Moonveil Regents. Cat, you want back in? I just let you out. Come on. Come on. Come on. No? Doesn't want in, just wants to scratch my door. That's a cat. Oof. Region is nice if you can stuff random 2-color spells in your deck to draw 2 when hellbent. I've yet to see anybody ever draw a card with Moonveil Regent, though. Now we're gonna yell? Now we're gonna yell? Come on, then. Uh-huh. Region draws 10 with Tiamat, though. Maybe. Bronze Plate Boar, 2 and a red for an artifact creature equipment boar, 3/2. Trample, equipped creature gets +3/+2 and has trample, reconfigure 5. Seems bad. Crackling Emergence, 1 and a red enchantment aura. Enchant land you control. Enchanted land is a 3/3 red spirit creature with haste. It's still a land. If enchanted land would be destroyed, instead sacrifice Crackling Emergence, and that land gains indestructible until end of turn. Huh. Okay. Why are you licking a cardboard box, cat? Why? I'm not even mad, I'm just confused. It doesn't seem constructed playable. Dragonspark Reactor, 1 and a red artifact. Whenever Dragonspark Reactor or another artifact enters the battlefield under your control, put a charge counter on Dragonspark Reactor. 4 mana, sacrifice Dragonspark Reactor. It deals damage equal to the number of charge counters on it to target player and that much damage to up to 1 target creature. Huh. 3/3 haste for 2 seems pretty playable. It's actually a 3/3 haste for 3 though, right? Because you have to put it on an untapped land for it to have haste. Which isn't super exciting. So we'd play Dragonspark Reactor. How many artifacts do we have to make this exciting to activate? Does it need to deal 4 damage? For that amount of mana? No, it needs to deal like 5? I don't see a way for this to be decent. Ingenious Smith and Treasure Vault with Dragonspark Reactor. I guess Treasure Vault could be interesting. You get to the point where you put like 2 Dragonspark Reactors in play. You've played a Treasure Vault or 2 is 2 more counters. 1 Dragonspark Reactor has 2 counters, 1 has 1. You get up to 7 mana, activate Treasure Vault for 3. Puts 3 more counters on Dragonspark Reactors. You've got 4 and 5. Maybe? Maybe? There might be a way you could really make this work with treasure tokens, I guess. So it does get really interesting with 2 treasure vaults, right? Because you sack the first treasure vault to make like 3 treasures, and then you have 3 treasures to sacrifice to the next treasure vault. Yeah, Sox did retrieve himself. If this is true. Free discounts. So if the first treasure vault makes 3 treasure tokens, the second treasure vault makes 4 tokens off the same amount of mana, and those 4 tokens immediately sacrifice Dragonspark Reactor, and that's like 8 damage to a player? That's pretty close. Can play Zorn. Okay. So you play Zorn and Unexpected Windfall with your Dragonspark Reactors? I think Affinity might want this in older formats. I think that that's probably way too slow. You can't really get to the point where you pay 4 mana to sacrifice this thing in Affinity, right? But like, I could actually start seeing this in Standard, I think. There might actually be a brew there. I don't think that you can get this, or I suspect you can't get this to actually seriously competitive, but I wouldn't be surprised if Zorn, Windfall, Goldspan Dragon, Treasure Vault. This could be a deck. Play with Kaya. I think Kaya might be a little too slow, but I wonder if there might actually be something to try to make this just go deep on 3 mana. Also, I think you really do want to play Treasure Vault if that's something viable, and I don't think you can play Treasure Vault much in the way of, like, outside of a 2-color deck at most. Maybe. We'll probably have to brew that deck some evening. Try to do something real dumb. Experimental Synthesizer. Single red. Artifact. When an experimental synthesizer enters or leaves the battlefield, exile the top card of your library until end of turn. You may play that card. 2 and a red. Sacrifice Experimental Synthesizer. Create a 2/2 white samurai creature token with vigilance. Activate only as a sorcery. It seems bad, right? Because it's only until end of turn. It's not until the end of next turn. So, like, what turn are you playing this on, and how often are you ever getting to cast the card you just exiled? Like, if it's turn 4, you play this and hope you hit a 3-drop or less, or else you get nothing? Great turn 1 play. Yeah, I don't know. And so then the ability, like, are you activating the ability on turn 7? It's a play, so you can play a land, right? Yeah, you can play a land if you haven't played a land already. Turn 1 into Mishra's Bauble. Alright, now we're talking. That is legal. All of those actions are legal. Put this in your reality chip deck. Yeah, you know the top card of your deck. You know when you can pay 1 more for it. That seems like a really bad way to not have actually gotten any card advantage and played a card for extra mana. I think this is nothing. But maybe it's got blink effect synergies, but mostly it seems like nothing. Explosive Entry, 1 and a red. Sorcery, destroy up to 1 target artifact, put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature. Oh, okay. Alright. I guess that's... Is that good? That's probably not good, right? I can't think of any format where you desperately need artifact destruction and are like happy that this is putting a +1/+1 counter on something, that you wouldn't have access to better artifact destruction than a sorcery. If this was instant, maybe it would be some sort of sideboardable card in the right metagame, but I don't think it is. Alright, Explosive Singularity. 8 red sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you may tap any number of untapped creatures you control. The spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature tapped this way. Explosive Singularity deals 10 damage to any target. So, Galvanic Explode for 20 is now the world we're going to attempt to live in? Is that what I see? This plus Galvanic Iteration equals 4 mana, 20 damage to the face. Not quite, but maybe. Hidetsugu's first right. And no concerns about the opponent playing a fetch land and invalidating your Hidetsugu's right. That's something. I don't know. Like, how much can we actually make mass creature tokens in blue-red? Mizzix's Mastery. Yeah, alright. So for 6 mana, we cast Mizzix's Mastery, and then we Galvanic, and we have done 20 damage to the opponent's face for 6 mana. That exists. There's this great turn spell that makes creature tokens. If it wasn't for the fact that that was already good enough to win the game, that'd be exciting. Okay, so we're playing Teamer, Scute, Swarm, Explosive Singularity, Galvanic Iteration, right? There is that Samurai spell. That's true. That makes a lot of tokens very quickly that we haven't gotten to because I think it's a multicolored spell, right? How many land ramp spells do we have that we could actually, like, Galvanic Iteration with? Gosh, I want to play Galvanic Iteration Escape to the Wilds, though. I want to do that. Somebody tell me not to do that. Alright, yeah, we're definitely going to build a Teamer deck in Standard that's playing Scute, Swarm plus Explosive Singularity and Galvanic Iteration and then copying all the land ramp spells. Definitely going to do that extremely bad idea. There's no possible way that's going to be a bad idea. Also, I love that Explosive Singularity is Disdainful Strokeable. That's going to make a lot of people extremely unhappy. Oh... Fable of the Mirror Breaker. 2 and a red. Create a 2/2 red goblin shaman creature token with whenever this creature attacks, create a treasure token. Oh, okay. That's not unreasonable. 2. You may discard up to 2 cards. If you do, draw that many cards. 3. Exile the saga and return to the battlefield transformed under your control. Reflection of Kiki-Jiki. 2/2 enchantment creature goblin shaman. 1 and tap. Create a token that's a copy of another target non-legendary creature you control, except it has haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next instep. Huh. So this is basically Ragavan, right? That's got to be playable then, because Ragavan's supposed to be pretty good. Is this literally Splinter Twin? It seems basically like they put Ragavan and Splinter Twin on the same card, yeah. Now, in reality, as much as I do love me some 2/2s that make treasures whenever they attack, this not having haste kind of sucks. It's a 3-drop that only comes out on turn 5. I mean, the token here that it makes on the first mode is actually kind of solid. The trouble is mostly that, like, not having haste and only attacking on turn 4 to start ramping you sort of sucks. But I have boarded into Captain Lannery in Control Mirrors and had that be completely stellar. But this is not quite Captain Lannery, I don't think. Sucks. So much fur. As for the reflection, I suppose it's probably good. And the fun thing is that it can copy the token that makes the treasures. But... I don't know. The discard outlet's kind of cool, though. Maybe you care about that if you got some kind of reanimator shell or something? Maybe. Maybe. Are we leaving already, buddy? Alright, I guess fair. You fetch yourself. Why not? Alright, next up. Flame Charge. X in a red instant. Flame Discharge. Flame Discharge deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker. If you control a modified creature as you cast this spell, it deals X plus 2 damage instead. Huh. It's... Oh, can it only copy tokens? No, it can copy anything. as long as it's not legendary. Flame Discharge probably is a good card if you're reliably getting the +2. How reliable is it? How playable is it if you don't have a modified creature? Two damage for 1? No, that sucks. So you really reliably need a modified creature. Lately, all the Magic cards have a lot of text. Yeah, as evidenced by the fact that we are 7 hours into this. Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I'm going to go with probably no on Flame Discharge. I don't think you can reliably have the modifications, but if in some way you do reliably have modifications, I think Flame Discharge starts to be interesting. But, I mean, the best case scenario is that you get a shock for creatures that kind of scales upwards. That's not actually good, right? No, I'm off it. Gift of Wrath, 3 and a red enchantment aura. Enchant artifact or creature. As long as enchanted permanent is a creature, it gets +2/+2 and has menace. When Gift of Wrath leaves the battlefield, create a 2/2 red spirit creature token with menace. Yeah, that doesn't seem good. That's not enough stats to be worth 4 mana. Wouldn't even be good if it made the creature on ETB, I don't think. I mean, it wouldn't limit it, but yeah, not a constructed. Goshintai of Ancient Wars, 2 and a red for a 2/2 legendary enchantment creature shrine. First strike. At the beginning of your instep, you may pay 1. When you do, Goshintai of Ancient Wars deals X damage to target player or planeswalker, where X is the number of shrines you control. Processing. Seems bad. But you put it in a shrine deck, because that's what you do with shrines. Gorogoro, Disciple of Ryusei. 1 and a red for a 2/2 legendary creature, Goblin Samurai. Red. Creatures you control gain haste until end of turn. Okay. 3 red. Create a 5/5 red dragon spirit creature token with flying. Activate only if you control an attacking modified creature. Huh. Bard class equals modified. Bard class. True. Bard class makes legendary creatures enter with a +1/+1 counter, which is Gorogoro. Yeah, I could see Bard class wanting that. And I suppose Bard class is technically still in standard, isn't it? I mean, I'm trying to think of how good this is without the Dragon Spirit ability. Is a 2 mana 2/2 with the ability to give stuff haste later on good enough to play? I think it is. I don't know how many you want, but don't you want to just play 1 or 2 of this in any red aggressive deck? Probably. Unless you really have competition for 2-drop slots. But competition for 2-drop slots is exactly what a lot of red decks have not really had in standard right now. I don't think you want this if it's legendary unless you're making dragons. But do you care about the legend? So, like, if you just play one, you don't care about the legendary downside, right? Would you, like, play this in Gruul aggro as a one-of? Not in Historic or Alchemy where you have more 2-drops, but in actual Standard? I feel like in actual Standard, this might not be terrible in a red deck or a red-green deck, right? Isn't the Boaster still better? Is it? I don't know about that. I guess it has First Strike, but I feel like it's a lot easier to get value out of giving stuff haste. Right, for dragon making, yes. I'm picturing this card without the second ability. I think this is close to playable off of only the first ability. That's where I'm trying to evaluate it well. Maybe. Is it better than Cemetery Gatekeeper in Standard? I feel like probably. I don't think Cemetery Gatekeeper is super excellent in Standard. The formats that it sees play in tend to be formats with fetch lands, right? Because it does do that with lands. Yes. Yeah, Gatekeeper definitely better in formats with lands. Sees most play in Pioneer? Really? I know literally nothing about Pioneers. That's interesting. Because top decks are all spell slingers and they want huge redundancy on Eidolons. Oh, okay. So more as a hate card than like just a vanilla beater with synergy. If you try to tell me that all of the Pioneer top decks are combo decks, that's not selling me on the concept of Pioneer at all. Well, yeah, alright. Goro, not going to be surprised if that sees play as a one-of, but also wouldn't be surprised if it sees no play. Comes down a lot to the reliability of mana, because currently the reason Gruul decks kind of struggle for 2-drops, and the reason that Temur and Jund especially struggled for 2-drops if you tried to build them aggressively, was that you really couldn't play Werewolf Pack Leader. Just too hard to play double green on turn 2. And maybe Goro's got a spot, but yeah, maybe. I don't know. Interesting, but not like terribly exciting ultimately. Heiko Yamazaki, the General. 3 in a red for a 3/3 legendary creature human samurai. Trample. Whenever a samurai or warrior you control attacks alone, you may cast target artifact card from your graveyard this turn. Seemed bad. Invoke Calamity. 1 red. 5 CMC total. Instant. You may cast up to 2 instant and/or sorcery spells with total mana value 6 or less from your graveyard and/or hands without paying their mana cost. If those spells will be put into your graveyard, exile them instead. Exile Invoke Calamity. Calamity goes into the Velomachus deck. You can invoke Justice if you need to. Makes Velo flexible. Maybe? It could certainly fit. It does require you to have stuff in your graveyard already, though, which is sort of awkward. You can... Unexpected Windfall into Invoke Calamity? Invoke Calamity gets back Windfall and a 2-drop? How many 2-drop playable instants do we have right now? Fork plus Tasha's is interesting. Or just Galvanic plus... Wait, how does that actually work? Fork? Okay, so you can't cast Galvanic plus Tasha's, but you could cast actual Fork plus Tasha's because the Fork targets. So you cast the Tasha's... Does the targeting on that work? You can't cast Teach by Examples, because that creates a trigger on the next cast, and Teach by Example has to resolve before you cast something. For the same reason Galvanic Iteration doesn't work, that doesn't work. Dual Strike also doesn't work. It has to actually target like Fork. You can't do Galvanic into Collected Conjuring. Do we have any historic target copy spell? Double cast doesn't work. Dual strike doesn't work. Expansion doesn't work because it's split cards, so you can't target it with Invoke Calamity. Galvanic Iteration doesn't work. Increasing Vengeance. Are you legal in Historic for some reason? Why are you legal in Historic? Oh, Mystical Archive. Okay, so Increasing Vengeance does work. Wait. You may cast up to 2 instant and or sorcery spells with total mana value 6 or less from your graveyard. Oh, and or hand. I didn't see the from hand bit. That's interesting. That's really interesting, actually, for Velomachus. Oh. Huh. That kind of changes this entire card. Okay, but Increasing Vengeance not only works, but if you cast Increasing Vengeance from the graveyard using Invoke Calamity, then you copy the other thing twice? Yeah, that's it. Only in Historic, and only that one spell looks like. Ironcrag Feet can also work with this. Can it? Not really. Because Ironcrag Feet has the you may only cast one more spell this turn restriction, right? So, I mean, I guess you can Invoke Calamity, then cast Ironcrag Feet and another 2-drop with Invoke Calamity, and then you, after Ironcrag Feet resolves, you have 7 red mana. I guess if you copied it with, like, Increasing Vengeance, then you have, like, 14 mana, and you could cast one spell with 14 mana? Potentially? Maybe? Increasing Vengeance in Historic is sort of interesting. This plus Increasing Vengeance plus Collected Conjuring equals 6 Stone Rains. If you somehow have 6 Stone Rains in your deck, yes. That's probably not likely, though. Okay. We could Invoke Calamity, increasing... Okay. Here's the plan. Turn 4. Unexpected Windfall, discarding Increasing Vengeance. Turn 5. Invoke Calamity, Unexpected Windfall, Increasing Vengeance it, draw 6 cards and make 6 treasures. How's that for a dream? Huh? This never beats out Mythic combos in Historic. We gotta do some Standard for it to work. I mean, probably, but... It's also worth noting we can Invoke Calamity to play Escape to the Wilds, so, like, that's pretty cool, though. Yeah, maybe tricky. If you have 2... If you cast 2 static discharges and then recast off this, that's a lot of damage. Less than you think, though, because static discharge doesn't hit other static discharges on the stack. So, I mean, I guess that's... Assuming you cast both of them and they all got counters, I guess that's still 2 static discharges. Wait, does static discharge put a counter on itself? Yes, it does. Okay, so the first static discharge does 3, puts a counter on itself. Second static discharge does 4, puts a counter on itself. So both static discharges in the graveyard have 2 counters. So Invoke Calamity casts 10 damage worth of static discharges at that point. Which, alright, that's not embarrassing, for sure. Maybe? Maybe. Invoke Calamity in Velomachus is sort of interesting. The from hand bit does make this a lot more playable, since you don't have to worry about discarding stuff from hand in a pinch. That adds a lot of reliability here. You might have to brew with that. Ironhoof Boar, 5 and a red for a 5/4 artifact creature Boar. Trample haste, channel, 1 and a red, discard Ironhoof Boar. Target creature gets +3/+1 and gains trample until end of turn. Seems bad. Kami of Industry, 4 and a red for a 3/6 creature Spirit. When Kami of Industry enters the battlefield, return target artifact card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Seems bad. They don't word the copy spells like Increasing Vengeance anymore. They're all worded like Galvanic Iteration, so you don't get double upped by a counterspell. Yeah, I mean, Galvanic Iteration's wording is pretty much strictly better, but the reason it isn't strictly better is, I suppose, situations like this, where getting to target stuff does work. I'm still not even like 1,000,000% convinced that Invoke Calamity with Increasing Vengeance works the way I want to. If you cast 2 spells at the same time, are you able to cast one first so that it is a legal target for the Increasing Vengeance you're casting in the same timing window? I think you can sequence it like that, but I'm not 1,000,000% sure that it works like that. It does work like that? Okay, because clones don't, right? And I think that's for a different reason, but you can't Collected Company into a clone plus a 3-drop and clone the 3-drop that you're getting at the exact same time. It's not actually possible to put 2 spells on the stack simultaneously. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. You can have 2 creatures enter simultaneously, technically, but not putting spells on the stack. The rules under the hood is slightly technically different. Alright. Kami's Flare, 1 and a red instant. Kami's Flare deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Kami's Flare also deals 2 damage to that permanent's controller if you control a modified creature. Okay. This is interesting. You can put 2 spells on the stack simultaneously if they're copies. But in that case, you're not casting 2 spells at the same time. You're just putting 2 spells onto the stack. Kami's Flare seems pretty good, probably. It doesn't take a lot of reliability to make just... How often does this need to deal 2 damage extra for it to be a playable card? Like 25% of the time? 50% of the time? How reliably can you have a modified creature? That's tougher to say. I mean, Kami's Flare plus that 3-drop black card that enters with a menace counter is interesting. Technically 1 spell at a time needs to resolve. Both are cast before 1 resolves, no copy. Yeah. Definitely doesn't work with Galvanic Iteration, but we're thinking that it works with whatever the name of that card was, Increasing Vengeance, because Increasing Vengeance actually targets something on the stack. The question I had was mostly if, when you're casting 2 spells at the same time, if you can choose one to cast first, and then legally choose it while casting the Increasing Vengeance. And I think that is how that works. How many other ways to reliably get modified creatures are there for Kami's Flare? There's definitely equipment, and I know for a fact that there's at least one technically strictly better Bone Splitter in the set that kind of modifies stuff easily. Other than that, and the 3-drop that comes with Menace, we haven't seen a huge number of modifiable creatures in Standard that I can think of, which might make it not super reliable to get the benefit out of Kami's Flare. Not really sure. Second spell is on the stack for Vengeance to target. I think it is. I think that's the way that works. Targets are chosen on cast, yes, but you get to cast both spells essentially in the same timing window, but you do cast one spell before the other, and it is fully put on the stack before you go to cast the second spell. Believe that's the way that works, which means if you cast the Vengeance second, you get to choose the first spell. I'm going to need to do some more research on Kami's Flare. My first instinct after actually thinking about it is it doesn't seem reliable to get stuff modified. Not enough for this to be good, but maybe that's the case. There's a reasonably high number of playable creature equipment here, but you actually have to be attached, right? The wording on this is kind of misleading because it says equipment or as you control and counters or modifications, but you can't just have an equipment creature. It has to be equipped to something, and most of the stuff that has the ability to be equipped to something is really expensive to do that. So you're not playing Kami's Flare to remove blockers on curve and getting to deal 2 damage, which is how you would want the card to play to be good. There's Ranger class and Gruul, but that's slow before it actually starts putting counters on stuff. You're not looking to play Kami's Flare until like turn 5 at the earliest, maybe turn 4? Is there playable stuff with +1/+1 counters? I guess there's the 2-drop treasure creature in Rakdos that adds +1/+1 counters to something that might be kind of interesting with Kami's Flare. There's a red 4-mana 3/3 haster that adds counters on each attack. Yeah, the question I'm thinking is like, how do you get to cast Kami's Flare on turn 4 and deal damage? There is Aspirant. That's true. That's true. I guess Kami's Flare could be really interesting in red-white with Showdown of the Skalds, technically. That might... Alright, red-white Kami's Flare might actually be something then. Kumano next card. What, we're just skipping over Kindled Fury? Red instant, target creature gets +1/+0 and gains first strike until end of turn. We're just going to skip over the unplayable limited card? We are. Kumano faces Kakazan. Single red. Saga. Kumano faces Kakazan, deals 1 damage to each opponent and each planeswalker they control. How's this actually pronounced? Kakazan? 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 Kakazan, probably. Alright, deals 1 damage to each opponent and each planeswalker they control. Each planeswalker they control is interesting, not just target. Whenever you cast your next creature spell this turn, or second chapter, whenever you cast your next creature spell this turn, that creature enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. Third, exile the Saga and return to the battlefield transformed under your control. Etching of Kumano. 2/2 haste. If a creature dealt damage this turn by a source you controlled would die, exile it instead. Kakazan would be the straightforward interpretation of the Japanese. Yeah, I admit I'm always kind of confused by the double letter things going on here. whether it's like pronouncing the letter twice or just taking a pause before the letter. So it would be more like Kakazan or Kakazan. Turn 1 Saga, turn 2 Goro Goro. Yeah. So 1 drop. I guess this is interestingly close to the Alchemy 1-drop Wolf, isn't it? Turn 1, you play this, it pings your opponent, whatever. Turn 2, you get to play a pumped 2-drop. Turn 3, you get a hasty 2/2, I guess, which is like technically better than a 1/2 Wolf, sort of. Maybe that's good. I don't know. Is that good? That seems like it's almost maybe good. Or something. I don't think it's as good as Okiba Reckoner Raid, but like, in a deck with enough 2-drops... The deck's non-Kumano isn't nothing with a bunch of death triggers. That's true. So, like, if this... I guess my biggest problem is this seems like it sucks if you don't play it on turn 1, right? Whereas Okiba Reckoners could, like, technically be played on turn 4 or 5 and be okay. This is just garbage past that. Which probably isn't useful. The Wolf giving Vigilance and Trample, you know, that might be an additional line of text on the card that actually is good, that makes this not really fair to compare. I can't disagree with that, because it's right. So, like... Being right does make it hard to disagree with things. Lizard Blades. 1 and a red for a 1/1 artifact creature equipment wizard with double strike. Equipped creature has double strike, reconfigure 2. This is relatively cheap. A 1/1 with double strike isn't, like, great, but... Does this go in white-red Kami's Flare Showdown of the Scalds? Maybe? Maybe. I feel like if you're not equipping this to anything, a 1/1 double striker for 2 isn't interesting. When does reconfigure stop being a creature? Either when the creature that it's equipped to dies, or rather, when does it stop being a creature? On resolution of the reconfigure ability, I believe. Yes, while attached, it's not a creature. So only after the ability resolves. Meaning if you pay the reconfigure cost, and they bolt your Lizard Blade in response, that does still kill the Lizard Blade. Yeah, maybe this is good, but it's concerning that it doesn't seem like a good enough card without work. So I guess it's mostly like, at what stage in the game do you get to equip this with something that has trample? Maybe this plays nicely with werewolves. It gives you a mana sink ability that doesn't involve playing a card. So like turn 4, you equip your Lizard Blade to your Reckless Stormseeker, pass the turn, transform it to Night, and then Kami's Flare something on your opponent's turn because you just modified a creature and you're getting to deal 3 damage to something and also 2 damage to the opponent. And then you have a 5/5 Trampler on your turn that has double strike. That's like kind of good, maybe. I'm still not sure if Lizard Blade is actually strong enough to justify all the times where it kind of just dies and doesn't do anything, but that curve doesn't sound terrible. The same curve works out pretty nicely with Tovolar too, because on Night, Tovolar's activated ability to pump itself with Lizard Blade is pretty cool. So maybe Lizard Blade is like a playable 2-drop? Alright, I'm kind of selling myself on that idea in Gruul. That's definitely not bad. Or at least it's not horrible. Is it better than Rihilda? Oh yeah, definitely wouldn't play Lizard Blade in any format other than Standard. I think you got way better 2-drops once you're looking at Alchemy and Historic. I'm always weary of cards that die to Spikefield, Hazard, and Standard. Yeah, but without Epiphany, we don't have that many decks that runs Hazard anymore. It definitely could be that we end up back in a metagame with Spikefield Hazard, especially if a deck wants to play Showdown of the Scalds. A Spikefield Hazard is not an embarrassing card to hit off Showdown of the Scalds. But for the time being, I don't think there's that many Spikefield decks. March of Reckless Joy. X and a red instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you may exile any number of red cards from your hand. The spell costs 2 less to cast for each creature card, or for each card exiled this way. Exile the top X cards of your library. You may play up to 2 of those cards until the end of your next turn. Up to 2 is kind of a bummer, isn't it? March of Reckless Joy sounds like a night out at the pub with the lads. Yeah, I've had some nights that could be described as such. But you get to pick out all the cards until you cast the second one. Yes. So paying more mana gives you more options, but not more card advantage. I feel like that's not great. Just cast it for X equals 2 at the end of your opponent's turn, maybe? But like, if you do that on turn 3, then on turn 4, oops, I hit 2 5-drops, I got nothing? That's not super exciting. It's much worse than draw 2, though, right? Because... I don't know. This doesn't sound good to me at all, unfortunately. Yeah, I think this is much worse than a lot of other versions of this effect, unfortunately. To the extent that I struggle to see it being playable in a world where Reckless Impulse exists. Think you'd play this over Reckless Impulse? Really? Reckless Impulse for 2 mana does what this does for 3, and a big portion of how easy it is to get the use out of the cards you exile is how many of them can you play in the same turn as this. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. How often is this better than Unexpected Windfall? I guess Unexpected Windfall is card neutral, and technically if you hit 2 spells that you can cast off of this, you do go card positive. Is this maybe interesting in a world where you use it to play fewer lands? Now, I am not an expert at the ability to build mana bases in red, but like, do you try to play 4 March of Reckless Joys and go down to like 17 lands in red with the expectation that you get to keep a hand that has 1 land and a March of Reckless Joy? Because you can exile another random spell to Reckless Joy for 1 mana and get to look at the top 2? And then, like, presumably play a land, and if your curve is low enough, also play another spell, and you're not actually down lands at all? And if that's a functional play pattern for March of Reckless Joy, does that make this the first one where that additional cost ability is actually a huge deal? The black one, it was a benefit that sometimes mattered. The other ones seemed like they didn't matter at all. But this one might actually be really good if that is a powerful play pattern. that dramatically affects the number of lands you get to play in your burn deck. And the fewer lands you play in your burn deck, the more reasonable it is to play a low curve. Yeah, I mean, maybe. I guess that is a very functional difference over Reckless Impulse. Yeah, but like I said, I'm definitely not the person to ask about how to build red mana decks and their curves with super low amounts of lands. But once you start playing a deck that actually has like 25 lands in it, I don't think March of Reckless Joy is a very interesting card. I think at that rate it's bad. Ogrehead Helm. 1 and a red for a 2/2 artifact creature equipment ogre. Equipped creature gets +2/+2. Whenever Ogrehead Helm or equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice it. If you do, discard your hand, then draw 3 cards. Reconfigure 3. Okay. So 2 mana 2/2. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 for 3 mana equip cost. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice it. If you do, discard your hand, then draw 3 cards. So if it's equipped, it doesn't sack the helm itself. Yeah, I think that's the way I would read that. The equipped creature dies, not the helm. I have no clue if this is good or not. Do those channel lands have a color? I don't know. I haven't seen them yet, but I'm assuming they don't. Unless they specify otherwise. Ogrehead Helm is a weird Bomat courier. A really weird Bomat courier. That's the only comparison I can think of. What does it refer to? Yeah, it's kind of confusing with the way that it's worded. I think whenever Ogrehead Helm or equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice it. I think it is referring to Ogrehead Helm or equipped creature, meaning whichever one of those two things deals combat damage to a player, you sacrifice that thing that dealt the combat damage to a player. But yeah, super grammatically ambiguous. That could be read either way. It could technically refer to either the entity dealing damage, or it could refer to Ogrehead Helm. But yeah, I think it's the thing dealing damage. Dual-faced lands have a color, though. You could pitch them to a march. Like Spikefield Hazard? Yes, you could, technically. Because you're not actually pitching a land, because the land isn't the card. The land is the backside. The land is still technically colorless. That's just not the card. No. Stop it. I need that wicker for being structurally integral? Integral? Structurally integrity cat. Sacrificing opponent is slightly illegal in most civilized countries. What, you can't get a religious exemption for that? Right, when a card is not specific like this, it's talking about itself, you always sacrifice the helm? Well, you would think, but I don't think that's the case here. Yes, Rahilda's backside is no longer colorless. It is now red. They did, in fact, fix that, not in a rules update, but in a patch notes. Peerless Samurai. 2 and a red for a 2/3 creature human samurai with menace. When a samurai or warrior you control attacks alone, the next spell you cast this turn costs 1 less to cast. That's actually kind of a cool ability for limited. But, I mean, it sucks. But also, cool ability in limited. I mean, it doesn't suck in limited. It sucks for constructed, so we're going to move on. But can we talk about how the flavor text here is weird? Since I just said we're going to move on and I'm totally lying. I fear I've run out of worthy opponents. Says the Peerless Samurai. Flavor text implying they have no equal. They're literally a rarity. But, you know, Peerless Samurai are super common and just walking around all over the place. That doesn't seem like... That doesn't seem quite accurate, huh? Cat, no! I need my computer, no scratching it. Come on. How come you're so energetic at 3 a.m.? Why is that the way cats are? They're next to a dead body. They just became Peerless 30 seconds ago. Ah, and this, one assumes, should have upgraded their rarity. Alright. Rabbit Battery. Single red for a 1/1 artifact creature equipment rabbit. Haste. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has haste. Reconfigure red. Oh. I was expecting a more expensive reconfigure. That's actually kind of interesting. The flavor text really reminds me of Worm. See, the problem whenever anybody mentions Worm is I have to think, do they mean that superhero web novel? Or do they mean that comic whose name I can never remember? And I'm pretty sure the comic is actually called Bone. Which, for some reason, you know, they're 4 letters, so it's basically the same thing. I like this way better than the other haste thing. Better than Goro Goro? Probably, I'm inclined to agree. There is a comic called Bone. That's good to know. Is there a comic called Worm? Nope. Just the web novel. Is Worm a comic book? Nope. Google literally says it's a web serial. Okay. Oh, there. The Worm is a comic strip. Got it. Got it. Good morning, Chris. Oh, please don't say morning. I don't want to acknowledge that I've been doing this for 8 hours and I'm still not done. How do you do? What do you think about the new collection until here? Which one's your favorite so far? Favorite card so far? What is my favorite card so far? It might be Okiba Reckoner Raid. That's weird to say. Mindling Mech's been interesting too. Yeah, I think I might be on Team Okiba Reckoner Raid. Only came in about an hour ago, probably going to just rerun the stream tomorrow while I work. Well, I'm going to spend tomorrow editing it into probably like 3 different versions that I'm going to upload all to YouTube. So if you don't end up doing that, rest assured, I will have something prepared. Alright. Rabbit Battery seems, straightforward, but interesting. Also, that art is just radical, so I would love if it actually ends up being playable. But, again, aggressive cards, hard to quite quantify. Giving a creature that it equips to +1/+1 is cool. But the stats on it aren't super excellent, and Goro Goro's stats are actually kind of... 2/2 for 2 isn't good, but something. There's a couple good payoffs for having modified creatures. So far I haven't seen too many that are excellent. Kami's Flare is interesting, but not excellent. What could be more red than giving a toddler a rocket-powered toy? That is red, huh? No. That's not wrong. Reinforced Ronin. Single red for a 2/2 artifact creature, human samurai with haste. Okay. At the beginning of your instep, return Reinforced Ronin to its owner's hand. Okay. Channel. 1 and a red, discard Reinforced Ronin, draw a card. Okay. Huh. That doesn't sound interesting. That sounds sort of bad, if I'm being honest. Other than... If this cost a single red, I would be excited to play it in historic Jeskai control. But how come it has to cost 2 mana, though? I just want to put artifact and creatures in my graveyard for low amounts of mana to turn on Delirium. I still might play this with 4 Unholy Heats in Jeskai control. I still might actually do that. It's just a really bad idea. But I still might. I got no interest in the fact that it's a creature. I just want to put 2 hard types into the graveyard. Okay, wait. Here's the plan, right? Expressive Iteration, cast Reinforced Ronin, and then it goes back to your hand so you can discard it, draw a card later. Chamber Sentry dies for 0. Yeah, but it doesn't draw a card, though. Reinforced Ronin. We don't even have to, do anything. Just draws a card. We're not losing mana. I mean, realistically, the answer is play 3 copies of Plains and play that white 5-drop for some horrible reason. But, I don't know. This is definitely better with Expressive Iteration. Not good, but it's better. With a Zerta Companion, you can discard it for 1. Oh, now we're talking. Now we're hitting the real synergies. The synergies WotC didn't want to tell you about. You played that many Plains, you have to give up Charm. Don't threaten me with good advice. Alright. Just cut your silly Zerg first, Kanta. Oh, I came to that unfortunate conclusion a long time ago, unfortunately. Scrap Welder. 2 and a red for a 3/3 creature Goblin Artificer. Okay, those stats are decent. Tap, sacrifice an artifact with mana value X. Return target artifact card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield and gains haste until end of turn. Okay. Wait, that's actually kind of decent, right? That's a useful ability, and it's on a 3/3 for 3 that isn't terrible. That goes in our Stinkbug deck from earlier that was playing Virus Beetle and looping it. And you can do this at instant speed? It's actually this one can't loop. Why not? Oh, less than X, not X or less. Oh, alright, never mind. Womp, 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 womp. Alright, I've lost all interest. How do you loop the Scarab? Well, you can't here because I misread the card, but there was some 2-drop in Historic that allows you to loop artifacts in play for artifacts from the graveyard that cost 3 or less. So at instant speed on your opponent's draw step, you could sack a Virus Beetle to get back a Virus Beetle, and therefore make them discard in their draw step, which is cute. This one sack Thought Monitor for Bolas's Citadel? Yeah, alright. But then you have to deal with the Thought Monitors on top of your library that you have to pay 7 life for to cast with Citadel. That might not be the synergy you're looking for. Scrapyard Steelbreaker. 3 and a red for a 3/4 artifact creature human warrior. Pay 1, sacrifice another artifact. Scrapyard Steelbreaker gets +2/+1 until end of turn. That seems extremely bad. Seismic Wave. 2 and a red for an instant. Seismic Wave deals 2 damage to any target and 1 damage to each non-artifact creature target opponent controls. Huh. That's actually really interesting. So this actually lets you kill a 3-drop at instant speed and deal 1 damage to each non-artifact creature that opponent controls. Because you can choose to deal 2 damage to a creature, and then that creature also takes the 1 damage. But missing artifacts might suck. It's probably worse than the deal 2 for 3 spells in standard, but it doesn't hit any of your own creatures, and it's instant. Because Crush and Cinderclasm both hit your own creatures. Vengeance kind of does, except for the Vampire Tribal. I don't know whether doing 3 to something is better than dealing 2 to everything. Like, there is no one is better than the other. It's contextual to the metagame you're trying to play against. But, like, there could definitely be cases where Seismic Wave is a super correct metagame call. This is the kind of card... I mean, there could also never be a case where Seismic Wave is the correct metagame call if we end up with just that doesn't end up being the case. But this is going to be a card that I need to remember exists. Because there's going to be a time where I do a Scryfall search and look up all of the instants in red that are removal spells and come across this 6 months down the road and go, oh my gosh, I forgot this card existed. This is the perfect card. I know that's going to happen. But maybe it won't. The Shattered States Era. 4 and a red for a Saga. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap it. It gains haste until end of turn. 2 creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. 3 exile the Saga, then return to the battlefield transformed. 3/3 trample haste. Oh, wow, that sucks. It's a common. Okay. Gosh, that isn't good. Socks, are you eating my literal socks? Yeah? Alright. You think you can defend yourself? Not even gonna try? No, but just trying to look all smug and innocent. Deal 7-1 and 3-all with Torburin? Yeah, that's true. Seismic Wave is ever correct, then you're playing all the Spikefield Hazards? That is true. That is true. That is probably very true. Simian Sling. Single red for a 1/1 artifact creature equipment monkey. Equipped creature gets +1/+1. Whenever Simian Sling or equipped creature becomes blocked, it deals 1 damage to defending player. Reconfigure 2. That seems bad. Sokenzan Smelter. 1 and a red for a 2/2 creature goblin artificer. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may pay 1 and sacrifice an artifact. If you do, create a 3/1 red construct artifact creature token with haste. Huh. Huh. Is that almost good with, like, random treasure tokens? Maybe. Cat? Uh-huh. You're just really energetic, aren't you? I might not have enough energy to handle that, buddy. Running away. Okay, you want to? Oh. So maybe this is interesting with treasure tokens, but probably too slow to do that. Goes in the Oswald and Smith deck in the Spark Reactor thing. I guess it is multiple, like it turns artifacts into more artifacts. Like, you can even sack one of these constructs to it to make another construct, which triggers ETBs for the Spark Reactor. Maybe. Tempered in Solitude. 1 in a red enchantment. Whenever a creature you control attacks alone, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. Huh. I mean, I'm assuming that's kind of just strictly limited, but interesting, actually. But yeah, strictly limited. Thundering Raiju. 2 red for a creature spirit. 3/3. Has haste. Whenever Thundering Raiju attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control, then Thundering Raiju deals X damage to each opponent, where X is the number of modified creatures you control other than Thundering Raiju. Pretty bad Hellrider impression? Kind of. I mean, it does attack as a 4/4 with haste, which is, like, kind of interesting. Raiju put a flower in its hair to make itself look nicer. It did, didn't it? That's cute. I don't quite understand the idea of a lightning flower, but I'm on board. This seems totally decent. If this attacks as a 4/4 in a meaningful way and doesn't immediately die, then next turn it's like minimum a 5/5, maybe pump some other stuff. Flowers of the Spirits. Is the hooved dragon thing not supposed to be the Raiju? Alright, what's a Raiju? Is the companion to Raijin Thunder Animal or Thunder Beast? Its body is composed of lightning, with the form of a white and blue wolf or dog being the most common, or a wolf or dog wrapped in lightning. It can also be represented with other forms such as tanuki, leopard, fox, weasel, marten, tiger, cat, bear, porcupine, tapir, elephant, rat, rabbit, bat, squirrel, boar, deer, badger, moose, mongoose, civet, insectivoran, pangolin, monkey, rhinoceros, sea creature, usually marine animals such as a dugong. Wait, are you trying to tell me dugongs are real animals? The dugong is a marine mammal. It's one of 4 living species of the order Sirenia, which also includes 3 species of manatees. This is a real thing? I thought this was a Pokemon. Largely dependent on seagrass communities? Seagrass? Okay, like kelp and stuff, sure. Huh. Native to Southeast Asian waters, Northern Australia, Eastern Africa, southwest coast of India, Northern Madagascar? Huh. I had no idea. Wild. Okay, back to Raiju. Also whales, dolphins, porpoises, seals, fish, mollusks, crustaceans, insects, arachnids, millipedes, centipedes, quillin, or dragon. Alright, well we got there. That looks like kind of a dragon. And quillins are specifically like hooved chimerical dragon things. Alright. Alright. This checks out. This checks out. Anyway, card seems decent. Tawashi Song Shaper. 1 in a red for a 2/2 artifact creature human artificer. Whenever another artifact enters the battlefield under your control, Tawashi Song Shaper gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Limited, bad. Twin Shot Sniper. 3 in a red. 2/3 artifact creature goblin archer. Reach. When Twin Shot Sniper enters the battlefield, it deals 2 damage to any target. Channel. 1 in a red. Discard Twin Shot Sniper. It deals 2 damage to any target. Oh. That's another interesting channel ability. Is that... There's no way that's playable, right? In Historic? To turn on my Unholy Heats? I'd like to believe it is, but it's probably not. 4 mana 2/3 reach deals 2 damage to any target. I guess actually the ability to hardcast it could be relevant against aggro decks sometimes. Huh. It's uncounterable. Yeah, it is an uncounterable way to deal 2 damage to a Planeswalker. You know, currently people try to play Fry to do that. And this is probably way better than Fry. I'm going to choose to believe that. And not, like, question the fact that Fry can actually kill a Planeswalker or anything. Food not caring about shock at all is a problem. And it's probably a problem. This is true. Although you can just hardcast it against food, and then you got a 2/3 blocker, right? That's definitely good. It's the most reliable removal Goblins has. Well, I mean, Goblins has the cycle one that does the same thing, except you actually draw a card. That's probably way better. Howdy. How goes it? Alright, let me think. Bohemninda? Oh no, I can't do it. I'm sorry. I have no clue how to pronounce the name. I'm 8 hours deep. I'm struggling to think of how to pronounce the Magic card names right now. Bohemnida. Okay. Pretend I got there. I need it. I'm very sorry if I didn't. But help me out here. The cycle one depends on you still having enough goblins when it resolves. True. But if you don't have enough goblins, are you winning anyway at that point? Like, it seems like the Goblin Archer does more in a scenario where you're already losing anyway. Boe is okay. Imnida says, I'm in Korean. So, I'm Bohe. Okay. So it's Bohe Imnida. I was trying to do like... I saw Heim and was thinking like Scandinavian pronunciation. But that makes more sense. Thanks. I never like the idea that I'm getting names wrong, but it's hard to process names on the internet with no spacing sometimes. Gem Palm also isn't an artifact goblin, but does goblins care about the artifact typing at all? I guess, like, hard casting Twin Shot Sniper is technically better. But Goblins doesn't have any Delirium synergies, right? Not yet. Well, that's true. That's true. Not yet. Unstoppable Ogre. 2 and a red for a 4/1 artifact creature Ogre Warrior. When Unstoppable Ogre enters the battlefield, target creature can't block this turn. Limited, bad. Upriser Renegade. 1 and a red, 1/3 creature human samurai. Upriser Renegade gets +2/+0 for each other modified creature you control. That might actually be good. Can we please talk about the hairdo on that Renegade art? Oh, I was just going to mention that this looks like every male Final Fantasy XIV character I've ever seen in my life. Elvis is hiding on Kamigawa. Okay, so if we play a 3-drop that has a modification, this is just a 2-mana 3/3, right? If there's enough reliable ways for this to be attacking as a 3/3 on turn 2 or on turn 3, I think I like this card a lot. It's also worth noting, this card is really cool with Helena and Elena, right? Have I played Endwalker? No, I like 2 years ago at the beginning of the pandemic, I messed around with Final Fantasy XIV for like a week, but I don't play a lot of MMOs. I've liked... It's weird to say, I like the part of MMOs where you're leveling up and going through story stuff, but I don't super find a lot of the in-game multiplayer stuff engaging. So, like, I got a character to max level in WoW a couple of times. I've played Guild Wars 2 up until the point where you finished the single-player story. I actually really like Guild Wars 2. It did a good job of having a story that made it feel like you were impactful. And then I played Final Fantasy XIV through, like, I don't know, the first 20 or 30 levels or something. Turn 1 rabbit, turn 2 this, turn 3 second 2-drop and reconfigure rabbit. Yeah, that's a curve. This is true. This is true. Maybe the synergy with Helena and Elena for Upriser Renegade is going too deep. With Rapid, this could attack as a 4/4 on turn 3. So notably, it says other modified creatures. So you can't equip it to itself to turn it into a 4/4s. Otherwise, it would be a lot more interesting, because you could also just put +1/+1 counters on it and attack as a 4/4. So, gotta figure out how to pump the other stuff. Cruel Enchantment that gives counters may be interesting here. Yeah. Like are we thinking the 3-drop one that gives stuff Riot? I guess in the context of Historic, this could be interesting with just Spellbreaker. Spellbreaker could just enter with +1/+1 counters. There's an interesting question of, like, how many things enter the battlefield modified on turn 3 that are meaningful? Because we've had this question a couple of times now. Biting Palm Ninja is definitely the big one. It just seems like something I would want to play on turn 3 that plays well with cards like this. But maybe there's other 3-drops that I'm not thinking of yet. Voltaic Surge. Single red instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you may sacrifice an artifact. Voltaic Surge deals 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If the spell's additional cost was paid, Voltaic Surge deals 4 damage instead. That doesn't seem good enough. I mean, the flexibility of Shock as creature removal into Shock as Thundering Rebuke at instant speed is definitely interesting, but if this had an additional cost of you may sacrifice an artifact or, like, pay 2 mana, I would be on board instantly. The restriction of needing to sacrifice an artifact is pretty tough. We do have that 2-drop artifact that draws a card when it ETBs, and then draws a card when it goes to the graveyard in Historic. That's probably still very bad, but, like, I don't know. Voltaic Surge could be interesting in Rakdos Treasures or similar strategies. Maybe. Blood sounds more interesting to me. Sacrificing treasure seems rough, because if you're sacrificing a treasure to play this, you're basically going through a lot of extra steps to play Thundering Rebuke. It has Flash. That's actually beneficial, but, like, you're still functionally paying 2 mana for it at that point. There's that 1-drop that exiles a card on EDB leave. Yeah, the sword thing. The trouble is I still don't think that sword is playable on its own, and I don't want a card that's unplayable on its own that synergizes with another bad card to together turn both of them into kind of an okay card. Pelt Collector into Renegade seems decent. We don't pump Pelt Collector, though, do we? Is Pelt Collector power only or power and toughness? Yeah, so the Renegade doesn't pump the Pelt Collector. But I guess if you play a 2-drop 2/2 and pump the Pelt Collector, then Renegade enters as a 3-drop? Or enters as a 3-power creature on turn 3, which isn't ideal, but then it pumps the Pelt Collector? So not the greatest curve, but that is actually interesting. I feel like Renegade is definitely one of the cards that has a lot more potential that I'm going to have to do some looking around into. Voltaic Surge, on the other hand, I don't think I see it getting there. And with that, we get to wrap up Red. Oh my goodness, this only took an hour and a half. Wow, we made up so much time. Thank you, Red, for not having that many playable cards. even after we took a detour into dugongs.